Okay, here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are now listening to RPG Maker Code.
And then a little theme song goes here or something.
Oh, okay, cool.
Someone want to sing?
Do.
Welcome to the RPG Maker Cola podcast. I am Cash, otherwise known as Cashmere Cat, and today we've got some incredible developers with us, and I don't exaggerate here, I'm standing there, our current guests at the moment. They're going to introduce themselves to us in a moment, but I'd like to start with the developer on teams of the 2014 Indie Game Maker Contest winner and one of my personal all-time favorites, VX Ace game, Remnants of Isolation, atmospheric thriller Psychostasis, character-driven survival RPG Soul Sunder, another one of my favorites, a holiday spirit morality tale called The Gift, where does his prowess end, the brutal 3 cheers for the Strawman, and a couple of swap game made with Liberty and Zephyr, and perhaps most prominently, the lead developer of the mind-blowing Prayer of the Faithless. It's the incredible Red Nova.
Whoa, is this a work ceremony? I forgot to dress up. Should I dress up for the occasion? Sheesh.
Step up to the stage and receive your first place award for first place on RMN.
Oh my gosh.
Well, thank you. That was very kind. Well, okay. Shoot, what's left to say? You kind of... Wow. Okay, well, I joined RMN back in late 2013 because I was bright-eyed and starry-eyed and was ready to change the world with what I've got. And then I saw everyone else's project and I was like, holy crap, I've got no way. I've got no chance. And so I just kind of went at it because I was like, okay, well, I didn't see myself standing out at all. So I was just like, all right, whatever. This is fine. I don't know what I'm doing. So maybe I'll just pass by unnoticed and see how well that turned out.
I didn't know you had worked on so many games. Shoot.
Yeah.
When you say them all in a row like that, it's like the acclaimed, prolific developer of 27 games.
Oh my god, yeah.
I had a lot of time back in 2014. That was definitely the highlight of my time since joining RMN.
Yeah, I'm a massive fan. I really enjoyed all your games. Thanks for that. I'm going to introduce our second guest, which is also someone I regard very highly. I'd like to introduce the creator of the incredibly well-designed Unity game, It'll Look Great on Your Resume. And I'm not saying that the game will look great on your resume. That's the name of the game. It'll look great on your resume.
But it will, though.
Oh, jeez.
Creator of Mirror Boy, a game about a boy with a mirror who must dodge, deflect, and push your way through obstacles at the behest of others, which coincidentally describes some of the more toxic people I know. But no, Mirror Boy is a delightful...
Okay, this is how we're going to start? Okay, with some low-key shade. All right.
It's a metaphor, I promise. No, it's fine. No, yeah.
Cash isn't messing around.
Woo.
Putting up a mirror to yourself.
I'm not subtle with my storytelling.
Mirror Boy is a delightful boy, nothing like those people. Co-creator on Bright Future, creator on an octopus game named Love Has 8 Legs, a multiplayer FPS named Lantern.
Oh yeah, shoot.
Yeah, gosh, Rook has got a wild and wonderful gameography, and perhaps most importantly, creator of the upcoming boss game. Oh, I forgot about... It slipped my mind. Your latest game, Time Skippy. Yeah, I forgot about Time Skippy.
Oh my god,
well.
Time Skippy. Jeez, yeah.
So many games I forget about what to mention. Creator of the marvelous upcoming boss game, a game about bosses where you fight bosses in boss style to defeat bosses or flirt with bosses or tweet at bosses. Don't at me, bro. It's the one. It's the one, the only Rook, otherwise known as Slash or Agent V from RPGmaker.net. Yay!
Hey,
how's it going? Oh my god. Yeah, no, jeez, I forgot about half of those games. Oh god. Yeah, so shoot, I think I started RPG Maker stuff when I was like, I don't know, I was 13 or 14, back when like there was Don Miguel's cracked RPG Maker 2000 or whatever. I started using that, and then I found out there was a website for it, and I was like, oh, it looks like this is how people actually make games, because I had always wanted to, but I didn't really know how people did it. And then I got on RPG Maker and started making friends with people, and I started joining game jams and stuff like that. I've never properly published an RPG Maker game, and most of my games are action games too, but people on RPG Maker like them anyway, so...
I never actually noticed that.
Yeah.
I knew you did a lot of work in Unity, but I never actually noticed you haven't released an RPG Maker game, which is crazy. But...
And no, the thing is I've spent thousands of hours in RPG Maker, but the problem is I always try and make something too big in RPG Maker, Maker, and then I was like, well, I should just make something small in Unity instead, and it turns out those are the ones I get done, so...
That sounds about right.
I find it incredibly hilarious that you find it easier to make a game in Unity than RPG Maker.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. It's funny, I was having this conversation with somebody else a little while back about game making stuff, and it's just like the more I've worked on games, the more I've realized that like turn-based games are way harder to make than action games. Not overall, but like turn-based games are really hard to like design and make fun. So props to everyone in RPG Maker who can make a good, cool, exciting game because it's not easy.
Exactly, that's one of the topics we'll get onto later on in this episode. Yeah, we're going to go into this segment called The Buzz Corner. We talk about what RPG Maker games are gaining buzz at the moment, or just games that we're interested that we just want to shed light on. I'm going to start with a game called Shooty and the Catfish, specifically Episode 2, by Visitors from Dreams. The second episode of an episodic series with a Game Boy Color-inspired aesthetic and an original EDM soundtrack, and it contains a purportedly unique resource management system, hopefully it's a good one because that's hard to pull off competently, and a world full of strange characters and even stranger creatures. Shooty and Zat are a team dedicated to solving mysterious mysteries, for a price, of course. As much as they love what they do, they can't do it just for the love. Full disclosure, I haven't played any of Visitors' games, including Episode 1, but from screenshots and videos, they look gorgeous. Like, judging from the video trailer, they absolutely nail the Game Boy Color aesthetic, right down to resolution animations. I'm not an expert on that, but I just think it's brilliant. The palettes, I think, are like game-winning, pixel art. It's like a cartoonist did them because a cartoonist did do them. Visitor is an Australian animator and filmmaker, and it shows because their character designs are unique and interesting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Wacky, wild, super polished, and I just think there's truly no one like them.
No kidding.
This art is gorgeous.
It's a really awesome background.
Like, this pixel art is really, jeez.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a look at that.
Back when I started using RPG Maker, the vast majority of people would use the built-in sprites and stuff like that kind of provided asset packs that you get with it. In the last 5 or 6 years, and I bet you it's because RPG Maker games have started seeing a little bit more prominence. They end up on Steam and people buy them and play them. Even with something like Undertale, right, which was made in Game Maker, which was previously kind of I don't want to say a joke engine, but people didn't take it as seriously as homebrewed engines. And I think with all of that, we've started seeing so many RPG Maker games that have gorgeous handcrafted art. And this is they put a lot of work into this. This is gorgeous.
Yeah, no kidding.
I love when truly talented artists get their hands on RPG Maker and just redeem the reputation somewhat.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely.
We'll talk about a bit of art later, because I know you guys are both amazing artists.
What?
Goodbye.
I'm looking forward to that. But sometimes also we just make do with what we have. But this is...
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay, so the one that caught my eye was The Machine That Breathes by Darken. The first sentence on the game page, it's inspired by the likes of Resident Evil and System Shock. And I'm like, okay, I'm there already. But I look at the screenshots and I'm like, holy crap, this looks amazing.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I actually ended up seeing this one too, floating around a little bit. I mean, it was really pretty. It's just another one of those examples. Wow, people are starting to kind of realize you can just go wild with RPG Maker, and it still really, really works.
Well, The Machine That Breathes is made in Game Maker Studio.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go too. Shoot.
It's a Darken game, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No, this is RPG Maker user named Darken who created this game.
Yeah, so I've been looking around, and I've been a little bit out of the RPG Maker loop. And mostly, a lot of the times, a lot of the RPG Maker games I've seen that have, gone on to create stuff in other engines. I was just thinking about this the other day, but the folks who used to make Momodora, I forget the company's name, I forget the developer's name, but Momodora was the series of games that was made with RPG Maker or Game Maker, I think, and used to be all on RMN. And I think even Nessie worked on a couple. It's a pixel art game, and this group has kind of taken that series up to Game Maker and I think maybe Unity now. They did something called Reverie Under the Moonlight, which was a good sort of Castlevania-ish, Metroidvania sort of game, and they just released one called... I can't remember what the name is, and that's why it's blanking me. I'm sort of getting a sidetrack here, but this Grimm's Hollow game, it's called Grimm's Hollow. It's just another game that I haven't played anything of yet, but I've been looking at the art, and the art is gorgeous. And they have these fully animated, side-animated battle systems within RPG Maker. So it's in 2003, which is also just impressive for a number of reasons. I mean, it's just the kind of cute art that I dig. Even their GIFs that they're posting are really, really good. I've spent so much time in 2003, and like you have to hustle a lot to get it to do impressive stuff because it does not bend easily to your will.
Yeah, that almost made me rage quit RPG Maker at one point.
Oh yeah.
Because 2K3 was my first engine, and I got it all the way back in 2009, before we had the official release, and I needed to do a school project, and I was like, what is any of this? And I rage quit it after the semester was over, because it was for a school project.
Oh yeah, no.
Never to touch RPG Maker again until 2013, yeah.
It's not always a good response when you pick up an RPG Maker engine, or any new game engine for that matter, for it to immediately feel like you want to pull your hair out. Not immediately, but when you try to do anything flexible with it, then you discover its limitations. But for all that provides, there is a reason why people keep using RPG Maker 2003 and earlier engines, is because it's got that retro feel to it that you can't replicate, I guess, using other engines. Well, you can, but it's just a bit more difficult, I suppose.
Well, in my case, it was more like I didn't know how to do anything, because I'd never even heard of any kind of game design program until then, because before then, my prior experience was, hey, I want to make a game in Flash.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was like, nope,
Yeah.
I'm done with that. That was way too advanced for me. Then I was like, okay, RPG Maker, that's got 90% of what I already want to put in there. So, okay, let's give it a shot. And then I gave it a shot, and I was so confused.
The problem with 2K3 is that it drops so much in front of you right away. But then as soon as you want to do anything a little clever with it, this is before any of the RPG makers had any sort of interfaceable code, right? So you had to do the hackiest thing with the event systems. I'm looking at how they're doing these combats. I have an idea of what the code looks like behind this, and I was like, this requires a lot of really clever event manipulation to make it look this good. So I'm really impressed.
There's frameworks still being released today that are expanding the abilities of RPG Maker 2003.
Oh, really?
And I know developer Joseph Seraph is creating a new commercial game that tests the limits to its absolute.
Joe does a lot of stuff that really pushes 2K3, and I'm always really impressed. And their art, too, is like really, really good. So
Yeah, you know that old thing, art is defined by its limitations kind of thing.
yeah.
But the thing that always, whenever I see someone, okay, I get continuing work on your project in 2K3, but a part of me is just kind of wondering, why start a new project in 2K3? If you still have to do all those workarounds, like, I'm genuinely curious, what makes it worth it, rather than upgrading to Ace or MV?
Have you ever heard of Pico 8? I wonder if it's one of those situations like Pico 8.
Yeah, I don't know that.
So Pico 8 is essentially a small engine that has like very, very tight code and art and pixel restrictions. And some people have made some actual little devices that can easily download like Pico 8 games. If you look them up sometime, they're just like, for example, the original Celeste was built in Pico 8. So it was like prototyped in Pico 8 as just this little goofy little platformer. And there are people who love working in those kind of limitations.
I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, it's like these little pixel games on a tinier screen.
Yeah, and that's the sort of thing where I wonder if people are just like, I really just want to see what I can do in this engine that I really, like, I'm really pushing the limits of what I have here. Because I think there's some fun in that too, probably. Like you said, like, art is defined by limitations. Like, oh, yeah, you know, I can only write really small code and draw really small characters. So, like, what kind of game can I make?
But you can still do that with a recent engine. Just say, hey, I'm only going to be using 8x8 pixel sprites for characters.
People might be scared of things like the higher resolution. They just have to make a lot of workarounds to make it feel like a game that is from times of yore, I suppose. But I agree that there is a case to be made to use newer engines, particularly people still making retro-looking games in MV, for example. So it is possible, but it just requires sometimes some workarounds to make it.
Well, I mean, nowadays, 16 by 16 pixels can be considered retro. That's time's going to keep on going.
Oh, for sure.
We'll move on, though. We'll go into this segment, We Have Been Playing Games. Maybe?
Oh, jeez.
Have we? If you make games, do you really have time to play them?
Yeah, what kind of game developer has time to play games?
I know, right?
Oh, jeez.
Of course, if you talk to anyone who hasn't made games, they'll be like, oh, because this is an actual conversation I have with people. Oh, you make games? Okay, so somehow that translates in their brain to, okay, so you play video games all day just for quote-unquote inspiration?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've been playing chess incessantly.
Really?
Online chess, lichess.org. I've been fighting people online at chess. When I lose, I get angry, but I try not to. When I win, yay, it just feeds my addiction. I trapped some RPG Maker users into fighting me at chess. But sorry to those people, I didn't tell them that I used to participate in chess tournaments as a kid, and I used to win them. It's mean.
Oh, that's so mean.
Oh my god, wow. Rude.
It's mean, and I apologize publicly on air for all of the wonderful listeners here.
Oh, there's a term for that, and I can't remember what it is. But I do that a lot, too. I play a lot of fighting games. Well, I used to. Now I have responsibilities. But my favorite game was Soul Calibur. And I was over at my friend's house, and he pulls out a copy of Soul Calibur 4, which I put about 300 hours in at the time. He was like, hey, you played this? I'm like, no idea what that is. So I just go...
What is this game?
So we pop it in.
So you're a hustler. That's hustler, right? Like you're like the kind of person who goes up to a bar and is like, "Oh yeah, no, I could pick up a pool cue and I'll shoot a couple." Oh my god.
Which button is kick? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Look, it's only bad if you're cheating someone out of money. Otherwise, it's fine.
Yeah,
perfectly morally okay to do that to your friends.
You can start gaslighting them. Like, I don't know why, you know, and they just keep winning, and they're like, what? And then you're just like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm natural at this.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm just hitting buttons. I don't know what's going on.
Rude. Jeez.
They'll get the smell. They'll get it.
Yeah, they pick up on it. It doesn't take very long.
Well, it's fighting games, so you want to do what you can to win. And sometimes this guy he's a rival as much as he is a friend, so he deserves it.
Well, there you go.
That's the moral of the story here. If they deserve it, do it.
This guy I used to work with is like a state level chess champion or something like that. So we had a chessboard up at work once in a while, and I was like, I don't know enough about chess to really do well. I know how to do Scholar's Mate, which works exactly one time. And I can like impress people a whole bunch by winning like 4 turns in, and then I stop playing chess. It only works when nobody knows it's coming. But yeah. Oh yeah. I can't play chess for beans.
Recently, I've been playing Code Vein. If you know about Dark Souls, then Code Vein is just Dark Souls, but with anime. It's a very, very poor description, but from an outsider looking in, yeah, it's anime Souls. That's what it is. But I enjoy it.
Action role-playing game co-developed by Shift and Bandai Namco. Set in an open-world, post-apocalyptic dystopian environment, played from third-person perspective. I've read Nova's Dark Souls playthroughs where he puts himself under massive restrictions.
Yeah.
Documents the pain that ensues. It's just incredible reading. I highly recommend those topics.
Well, you may have noticed I didn't continue it. There's a reason for that.
Too painful.
Yeah. But yeah, I like to do challenge runs. Every now and then. I played through Resident Evil 4 with just the starting handgun.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It sounds about as fun as, well, it is.
You just love to hurt yourself.
I do. I don't know why.
It's always like challenge runs are always kind of fun though. Like, especially if you like the game and you're just like, I need an excuse to play it again, but I can't think of any, like, all right, fine, I'll do it with a different weapon or whatever. I've been playing a bunch. I played a few games. I played through the Goose game that everyone's loving. Which is pretty fun.
Yeah.
It's goofy and short and perfect. It's not a super long game. The best description I heard of it was like playing Hitman, except you're a goose. It's like, oh, you have some tasks to do, but you could do them however you want. You just do them in a mean, cruel goose way, which is fun. But I've also been playing Dicey Dungeons. It's really good. Dicey Dungeons is sort of like a deck building roguelike sort of thing, and it's by the guy who made VVVVV and Super Hexagon. He's got the same musician from Super Hexagon on it. Her name's Chipsell, and she makes amazing music. And it's like they've got all these good artists and everything, but it's a really good turn-based roguelike kind of game.
Terry Kavanagh is one of my favorite developers of all time. Some of the simplest ideas and concepts, but honed to their perfection. And also like one of the original reasons for the indie games resurgence? No,
like the boom, yeah.
Yeah, the big boom, like along with Super Meat Boy and Braid and all those original classics, just kind of bring it to the forefront. So any new game by Terry, I'm extremely keen. I probably will buy this. It looks fantastic.
It's very, very fun. V came out right when I started like figuring out like, oh, like I started getting further into game development, right? Because I was like halfway through college or something like that, and I started playing Super Meat Boy and V and a couple other games. His sense of design is just really, really on point. Like,
and this is. I'm taking a second turn, but I'm just going to mention one game that I really want to play.
Sure.
Baba Is You.
Oh, it's a hard game.
I am all for the hard puzzle game. It's a puzzle video game created by Finnish indie developer Arvi Teikari, centers around the manipulation of rules represented by tiles with words written on them in order to get Baba to his goal. So there'll be like rules like door is stop, door is shut, wall is stop, but you can like physically move the word stop and put you in there. So then wall is you, and then you are all the walls. And you control all the walls surrounding.
It's super fun, and it's super ridiculous, like seeing the rules change, and it gets real tricky later on. It's very fun.
It's just a mind screw. Anyway, next segment. Topics to discuss, because this is a podcast, and it's serious. So this is where we talk about serious stuff, and I'm just going to get into the nitty-gritty. You have been making games for a while. How did you come about, and it says here, making RPG Maker games, but for some of us it would be developing RPG Maker games and other engines. What's your story? Yeah.
Well, my starting story is pretty much the same as a lot of others. I started off with RPG Maker 2K3 for a school project, but by the time I got to the end of the semester, I was angry because I didn't know what I was doing, and there was a lot of crap at once, and I was too impatient to figure it all out, so I just dropped it. Until 2013, when I started messing around with it again. I hated the game I was making back in 2009, but I liked the story of what I was doing. And that story is the story of my current game, Prayer of the Faithless. That's how far back it goes. But to make my massive grand ambition a reality, I needed to teach myself how to actually make a game. Objective 1 was to start with a smaller game that I could get done in about 3 months, finish it, and then post it somewhere just to see what would happen. That game is Soul Sunder. That ended up taking a year and a half to make. My time estimation needed a little bit of work there.
I've never heard that before, yeah.
But that's how I got started, and I enjoyed it, so why not?
So I got started I think my parents picked up like an NES when I was like 3 or 4, and they always tell the story about how I saw them playing golf or whatever and like got obsessed with video games. So I get a lot of grief from them about that. But when I was a kid, I used to draw like Mario and Sonic levels all the time. So I'd draw like these really bad Mario levels where every block was a coin or whatever. When I was like 10 or 11, I started trying to make like pen and paper systems because my friend had talked about D&D and we read through one of the rule books, but we didn't have all the rule books we needed to play, and I didn't have any of the dice you needed to play, so I like opened up our Monopoly game, stole all the dice out of it, and then just made a bunch of games where all you did was roll sixes and kill monsters or whatever, and they were all really bad, but like, I think I started making video games with, somehow, I found out about Don McGill's RPG Maker 2000, which was an old crack by this guy who translated it over to English, sort of, and the help directories, sort of, so like you kind of figure out how to make games in it. Don McGill's the reason, like, it's probably the biggest reason like RPG Maker has grown and been around for so long, right? Like Yumi Nikki or something like that. All of that is Don McGill bringing RPG Maker over.
Yeah.
But then so I started, like very similar to Nova. I played like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI, and I was like, oh, I really want to make like my own really big RPG. So I planned out this huge RPG called Illogical, and I made like first couple dungeons or whatever. I planned out like, a materia system and all this stuff, and I did all this hand-drawn assets that were okay. And then I realized like I'd been working on it for 3 years, and I'd made like a dungeon and a half and like some story scenes. Like I spent a lot of time on stuff, but that's how I ended up on RPGmaker.net, is because I would ask people, hey, how do I use RPG Maker 2003 to do like limit breaks? Just trying to break it. And then I put it away for a while, and then I went to college. And like while I was in college, I found out that my college had a good game dev program, and so I kind of took a couple classes in that, and I found out about a developer named Sophie Holden. They were using Unity to make these cool little action games, and they made a game called Sarah's Run, which is like this game where you can reverse gravity and stuff like that. You can like run up walls and do all this cool stuff, and it basically just got to me. I was like, okay, if one person made a game like this, I could also make a game like I could make a small game that would be really cool. Like I just got to learn how to do it, and that's how I started using Unity, and that's kind of how I ended up where I am now, basically.
Yeah, your struggle to make a game for years is similar to mine. For about 5 years, I was trying to make a non-linear puzzle game and failed so bad because I just it was trying to create something for which I didn't have the skills. And then eventually, for an indie game maker contest, I created Account Mew, which was pretty much everything that I loved about puzzle games. And I continue to tease people with the demo, with the full version that will never come. Yeah, so what is your specific method for creating a game? How do you go about doing it? I know it's a bit of a nebulous process, but if you were to, say, start from the beginning, you have an idea, something inspires you, what do you do from there?
It usually starts with another game I play or something that I see outside or in some other media, like a movie or something. And I go, okay, well, I like that, but what if the main character did this instead or did something different? And I was like, okay, well, from there I'd say, okay, well, how would that work then? What would happen next? And then I would just follow myself through to the conclusion and then go, okay, that could work with something, but how would I represent that interactively? And then I just throw out ideas, and after iteration, I have a story of a beginning, middle, and end. And I was like, okay, well, this can work. And then I prototype it and then see if that can actually work. And then if I decide, okay, let's go through with it, then there we go. That's how we start.
Yeah.
And it just kind of keeps going from there.
It's interesting that you posed your inspiration as a speculation as to an alternate outcome of something you had already inspired by, and then you start iterating story, prototyping, maybe putting some graphics and combat on top of that, and then it's kind of an iterative process from there.
You see a lot of people who will talk like, oh, I really liked so-and-so game, right? Like, I really liked Mario, I really liked Dark Souls, but it would have been way better if they did this.
Yeah.
Or they really could have fixed that problem if they had done that. I always think that stuff is kind of funny because, from a designer's perspective, that's a super good way to think, right? You go like, hey, I should try this and see if this would actually be more fun or if this would actually be better.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you find out that oh no, there was a reason they did this way. I just didn't see it right away. And now it's very obvious why this doesn't work. Why you couldn't add a double jump to Dark Souls or whatever, right? People would be like, oh,
right.
It sounds ridiculous, but people would be like, oh, why isn't there a double jump? And then you would be like, you would try it and you'd be like, oh, because a double jump doesn't make sense in this game at all, or whatever. Yeah. But I think it's just from a designer standpoint, right? It's really good to be like, hey, what would happen if I took this and kind of ran with a different direction in it, or whatever.
Right.
And it's good to ask questions like that because you come up with good ideas and sometimes totally new games.
Right. What in your mind constitutes good game designs? How do you design games good? What's your personal motto?
Oh, Christ.
I'm going to kind of frame this in terms of RPG Maker, so...
even within RPG Maker, good and bad design are just... Even within the context of RPG Maker, what is good design becomes more and more nebulous the more that I go forward with it. What is good design before, you could, if you asked me this question about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, or even before then, what would constitute good game design? The first thing I would say, does it work? Is it broken? Is it not broken? Does each component of your game work as intended? Yeah. Great, good design. But recently I've come to see how limited that viewpoint is.
Right.
Because everyone has their own vision of what they want to accomplish. Because, if you want to speak about it objectively, if I told you, hey, look, I'm designing a game, it's a full 3D environment, but you can only move forward and backward. Left and right will turn you, but that's it. And you will be swarmed by enemies that are far faster than you. You cannot outrun. Because of these clunky controls. So if I explain that to you, the natural reaction would be, that sounds insane. Why would you do that? That's stupid. Don't do that. But you know what? I just described Resident Evil 4 to you. And I think we know how influential that game was. Yeah. So that taught me a lesson that, okay, design is the means to a developer's intent. And as long as that intent is accomplished, whether or not it's well received by somebody, I would say that would be good design.
That's a very good way of putting it, yeah.
Because not everyone's going to understand it. Here's one mechanic that everyone hates, at least everyone that I've talked to. RPG battles that you are supposed to lose. But you are not aware that you are supposed to lose. But if you want to convey a sense of hopelessness, you're going to need a fight that you're going to have to lose.
It's an interesting point because you created a game called 3 Cheers for the Strawman, where it has some things in there that I think are deliberately painful to illustrate a point in the game, a story point in the game.
Yes.
And I think innovation can be described as a multiplicity of many different elements. So when you describe like the movement scheme, I didn't immediately think that sucks because I was like, well, how fast you turn, what is it, 2D, 3D, it could suck. Like it's probably one of the ideas that's more likely to suck. But when it's the multiplicity of like many different elements together, it can illustrate a point. Like there's a game called Depression by Colunio, which is filled with like extremely irritating battles that go on. But it's one of those points where that's kind of the point of the game, and not everyone loved it, but I thought it was an interesting experiment in how you can purposely make your player's game a rough time just for the sake of illustrating the point of your game.
But, I mean, it's also worth taking into account that deliberately bad is still bad.
Right, yeah.
I mean, another good example that I would have would be, I don't know if either of you have played it, but what's it called? The Last Guardian.
Right.
In that game, you work with a big animal, and when you first start, you are given the ability to give that animal directions.
Yeah.
That animal will not always listen to you.
Yeah.
At first. And that's incredibly frustrating.
That was a big thing. I remember that being a huge stink when that game came out.
Yeah.
It's still funny, though, because the general perception of that game is still that it's kind of okay. It's because all the other elements sort of... I think I remember never being quite a big fan of Eco and Shadow of the Colossus, if I remember correctly.
Yes. Pretty much anything that team has made, I'm a huge fan of. Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, and The Last Guardian. I like them all.
Because there's like inspiration for Remnants, if I remember correctly, Shadow of the Colossus, for like story-wise.
Eco.
Eco was. Yeah.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot. That actually, now I think about it, I don't know why I never like linked those two games before, but they definitely are. There's a lot of similarities between them for sure, or at least like there's a little bit there. No, I would have to say, like, with what Novo is saying is, like, quote unquote good design is basically saying, like, yeah, what was your drive? What kind of emotion or experience are you trying to create for the person who's playing your game? And did you design your game in such a way to create that experience? And if you did that correctly, or if you did that well, then you've successfully created a design that makes your player feel the way you want. Like, game design is in some ways like very much just like a lot of psychology, where you're trying to make people feel like a sense of triumph or a sense of fear or whatever. One of the best examples I always hear is like, I don't play a ton of horror games, but like horror games where you get a machine gun or something like that, compared to like a horror game like Silent Hill or whatever, where you like have a baseball bat or a pistol and they don't really work super well, and you can't really fight back super well anyway, creates this sense of the fear of not being able to fight back. You feel more powerless, basically. People would call it bad design, like, oh, I'm surrounded by all these enemies and all I have is this pistol and it's not fair. When, like, well, that's very much the point. Like, the one thing I try and do, like the way I design my games typically, like from the ground up or whatever, is I tend to pick like one thing that I want to focus on as like a core. Usually that's like a gameplay mechanic, because I've thought of some fun mechanic, or I've just been like noodling around with code and I came up with like a way to move characters or whatever that feels good. And then I kind of go from there to see like, okay, now I want to wrap this mechanic in like a story beat that kind of works with it, or whatever, that kind of encompasses the feeling. So like, for example, the game I'm working on right now, which I won't go too far into, but basically you control two characters at once. And the idea is that a lot of the game is about teamwork and stuff like that, right? Like, it would be weird, I think, if you take something like The Last Guardian. The Last Guardian has a lot of the same puzzle platformer elements. You're trying to make linear progress through like levels and things like that. And combining that with controls that don't work half the time, even if you're trying to kind of create the feeling of this growing relationship between the boy and this beast, it counteracts the idea that, like, well, people are also playing the game to move forward and it doesn't work half the time, so you need to figure one that you want to focus on here.
The way I look at it, conflict is a collision of intention and obstacle. I feel like a game that I enjoy is a game that's made up of interesting conflicts. Does the player want something? Have you set it up so they actually want to do something? And if I want them to want something, And then I want the obstacles to their intention to be interesting. And I think that interest creates fascination and wonder, or whatever emotions that you're trying to build. And the oh wow moments that come from being overcome with an obstacle initially and then being able to overcome that to seek your intention. I think that creates nice conflict and resolution.
That makes perfect sense.
What inspires you to keep working? What drives you to think about more games to create? Do you ever run out of motivation? And yeah. What about you keeps going?
Well, yeah, sunk cost fallacy isn't really a good one, but it kind of works for me. Yeah,
sure.
But seriously, I've been at it. I've been at Prayer of the Faithless for going on 5 years now, so I'm still trying to figure out what keeps me going. Well, I'm at the end. I'm at the tail end of development. So
right
at this point, if I stop now, that would be far worse than I could possibly live with.
Yeah.
I'm just implementing the last cutscenes of the game, so all I need to do is just do another pass.
Oh wow!
Through the game and
that's exciting.
Update the art.
Yeah, I'm massively looking forward to that, and I'm willing to support in whatever way is needed for that project.
Yeah, but that was just recently though. Starting, I want to say. Starting 3-4 months ago. Yeah, that was when real work came down, started happening. But at the beginning of the year,
you seem to almost recreate the major parts of the game and strip it down.
Yeah, I tend to do that a lot. Things I think work at the time don't work mid to late game. Things I wanted to do, but I had a whole different sequence planned for key moments of the game, but then I realized they were way beyond what I was capable of doing, so I was just like, okay, well, I have to cut that when I was about a third of the way through.
You think these reworks have really, worked to improve your game?
Yes. The end result is definitely a much better game, but what I care about right now is a completed game. Because that's worth far more than untested hopes and dreams.
Tell me about it.
At the beginning of the year, I was not in a great place, I'll be honest. First off, if anyone has ever played Prayer of the Faithless, you'll know it's not exactly a cheerful romp in the park already.
Right.
Sure.
Staying in that kind of world for 5 years, and if you keep up with the news... And at a specific point in my life where I got out of college but was rejected by literally everywhere I've tried to apply to, doesn't exactly put you in a great headspace.
Yeah.
That really killed a lot of my drive to work on the game because I was like, I'm way too busy trying to figure out how to survive.
Sure. Yeah.
But I never really did stop. There was always something going on in the back of my mind, just being like, look, maybe I can try this, maybe X will work, maybe Y will work. Eventually, it got to the point where I needed to just get a clean break from the game. And I think I posted about this a few months ago where I was just like, look, I'm not in a great place. I need to step back. I need to focus on recovering and healing myself.
Yeah.
That month, I spent doing everything other than RPG Maker related stuff. Anything. And that worked so well that by the time that month was over, I came back in and I was going faster than I had ever been going in for a year and a half.
Shoot.
So if you want to say what inspires me to keep working, to get back to your question, Cash, it would be the need for self-care.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what keeps me going. Inspiration gets you started, but taking care of yourself will get you through to the end.
Sometimes, especially people like yourself who work so hard and are so productive all the time, not everyone works on their games as consistently as you do. That's why you churn out these games that are massive, as opposed to some of us who haven't created a game that's longer than an hour. So productive and, dare I say, sorry if this term offends you, but workaholics have a hiatus.
That's actually not that's actually a pretty apt description. For those who are not aware, and this is October, so I didn't realize this, but there's actually a month to celebrate this. or at the very least talk about it. I have ADHD,
Right.
like really bad ADHD.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the pluses of, and well, when I say really bad, is I have to take like the maximum amount of medication that a human is allowed to take to just keep my brain in working order. And one of the pluses of that is that we can operate, well, you know what, I should just say because everyone has their own experiences with it.
Yeah.
My brain works like a drag racer. You sit down, once I go. Like, I can just keep going. The problem is stopping or changing directions, also not really great to do.
Sure.
And that's just kind of how I work. It takes me a while to get my momentum going, and it really takes me a while to stop. But once I'm going, I go. And that's kind of representative of when I got back from my hiatus. That month-long break, I was off. I was going. So that's one of the good things about it. The bad thing is that, for me, with ADHD, is that I feel like I would die if I stopped. So, not exactly the best advice I could give to people. Have ADHD? No, I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah.
But what inspires me to keep working, it's a mix of things. My ADHD, my need to see this through to the end because I'm so close.
Yeah.
Sure.
But that's my answer.
Yeah, I've interacted with quite a few developers who are extremely productive. And actually, I've noticed that some have ADHD as a common factor just because the things that are associated with it. I'm glad that you had the time to rejuvenate your soul and increase your happiness by just setting aside that time for people like yourself. Self-care is so important, and for everyone. I'm very happy that took place, and I'm proud.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I was just kind of in response to Nova's stuff. Like, game development is very much like it has to be like a marathon and not a sprint, right? Like, how many? I mean, people talk about crunch and stuff all the time, and even people who are working on their own. Like, I definitely have a tendency to very much either work very hard or feel guilty that I'm not working very hard.
Right.
Yeah. There's a great quote. I forgot who said it, but it was basically something like, artists start creating when the pain of not making something is greater than the pain of making something.
Right.
It's just like, no, but like, just from what I get started, like, I have a massive list of projects that I would like to try someday that I will never get to. Because that list grows way faster than my ability to make games off it. But like, I think the idea that like how I keep motivated is making good habits, right? Like, I think people like this idea that you get all this inspiration, and inspiration drives you to start working on something, and then you kind of just keep working at it, and then you're all inspired and you make this great thing or whatever. But like, inspiration lasts for like the first week or two of a project, and then you have the rest of the project to make. So like, inspiration is good enough for a game jam if you're just making something in 72 or 48 hours or whatever, which has worked. Like, I've done a dozen game jams or whatever, and it was all just like, oh, we had a great idea and we made it and now we're done. But to really like finish a game or finish any sort of like creative project, I think you need to kind of build like essentially like good habits, right? Like, I would say, quote unquote discipline, but like very much like you come up with a list of saying like, hey, I'm going to work on this 30 or 45 minutes a day or an hour a day or whatever, and I'm going to try and make small bits of progress every day, and just keep a good habit out of it. And just the biggest thing being not pushing myself too hard on any one day, and also being consistent, right? So like every day you do something, even if it's just a little bit. This is one of those things where like I released Mirror Boy, I think something like 5 years ago now. And before I made Time Skippy, which is a game I released like last month or whatever, I had a 5-year hiatus, right? And that very much came from I was working full time. While I was working, I would wake up at like 6 or 7 every day. I would work on video games from like 7 to 9, and then I would go to work from 10 to 6 or 7 or whatever. And then I would just do that every day. So I would work on games a little bit every morning. The problem being is that if you're only working on games an hour or two a day, it's still pretty hard to make progress. And I get frustrated and distracted easily. So like I would want to make bigger and bigger games, but now I had less time than I ever did before. So I never got anything done. So I'm like really impressed with your ability, like Nova, to stick with a project for 5 years, because I have not been able to do that.
I agree.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's really impressive. So and in that case, like the real trick is like, okay, we'll make smaller games then, right? Like find a way to finish games. It is really hard to make a video game too small. Because it always ends up bigger than you want it to be, or always ends up bigger than you think it will be.
So in that case, especially if there's areas that are outside of your expertise, you can either take the time, extend the development time to learn that, such as if you're not so great at art, or commission people to do it for you. Yeah,
and that's a lot of exactly. I would highly recommend. I think people take a lot of pride in like, oh, I did this all by myself, and it's almost possible for anyone to, at least with game development, like if you spent enough time in it, most people would be capable of like learning how to make music and compose music, or to do some pixel art or whatever. It would take a lot of time, but you could do it. But the question is,
do you have that time?
Yeah, do you have that time, or do you have the money to like hire someone who already knows how to do it? And it's definitely way better than you are if you've never done it before. I hired Aka to do a bunch of art for stuff because I was like, it will take me years to do anything close to what she can make. So like, why would I try? I'm trying to get the game done sometime this decade. So I'm gonna hire somebody who knows what they're doing.
Or you can just be the ideas person and hire them to make the game for you.
Yeah, you could do that if you want. Oh God. Yeah. I mean, if you got the money for that, if you have the money for that, then hey, why not? That just makes you an investor at that point. So there you go.
Yeah.
Hey, I've got this idea of Dark Souls meets Fortnite. Can you make this game for me?
Have you actually thought this through? No, it's just an idea. That's your job.
You build you build forts, and there's like lots of hats and stuff and upgrades for your forts, and
I'm trying to imagine.
It's a roguelike. It's a roguelike, and it's a massively online multiplayer roguelike, and it's a
And we can do it in like 3 weeks.
I see. Like, here's the thing. Like, that idea doesn't sound like I want to try and make that work in my head.
Oh, Cash, did you just give him another idea?
I'll do it.
Someone make that game.
No. The reason I ended up learning how to program, and the reason I ended up learning how to do Unity at all, was because when I went to college, or when I was in this little game design program in college, they would kind of split people up into like designer, programmer, artist, whatever. And I wanted to be a designer because I liked making the fun and the psychology behind making a fun game. Like learning where to hide treasure or whatever, like doesn't matter. Level design, character design.
Yeah.
I liked balance a lot. But the thing is, I was like, oh, well, I don't want to be a designer that can't do anything on my own. Like, I want to understand a little bit about each of the things that make up a game, because a designer really has to like have a little sense of music, have a little sense of programming and art, so that you have a sense of like, if you're going to hire an artist to do something for you, you have to have enough of a sense of art to be like, hey, how long is this going to take? Or hey, is this something that's possible that will work with this game or whatever?
Yeah.
And I did that enough to know like to learn programming on my own, just because I would like prototype stuff. And then I ended up becoming a programmer. Because I was like, I was like, well, I want to make all these games, but I don't want to just tell programmers what to do. So I guess I'll learn how to program. And then I did it.
Became a legit programmer.
then like someone called me up one day and they're like, hey, do you want to work at our company? And I was like, what? Like, you guys don't know what I'm doing. Y'all know I don't know what I'm doing, right? Like, I just did this so I can make video games.
None of us do.
Yeah.
Yeah, like really, none of us really know what we're doing. We just have an idea, and we know what we have done in the past, so we're just like, okay, we'll figure it out from here.
Yeah. I will say that a lot of people give off the idea that they know what they're doing. They're
liars. Every single one of them.
More like
liars.
If you think you don't know what you're doing, you'd be surprised how many people who you're really impressed by also still don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they're still really good at what they do.
All right, I'm going to move on to asking each of you about specific projects, just to keep it moving.
Sure.
All right.
So I'm just going to give a quick synopsis of each game. I've chosen one game from each of you, and for Rook, that's Boss Game, and for Red Nova, that's Prayer of the Faithless.
Woo, cool.
So I'm going to kind of ask both shared questions and individual questions, and we'll keep this pretty brief because we are just a bit of a time crunch at the moment. But
sure.
All right. Oh, yeah. Whoa, wow. I just looked at the time.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But first, and correct me if I'm wrong at any time, I'm just going to read some of your game descriptions to get us in the jolly old mood.
Sure.
Boss Game by Rook is a boss game. In Boss Game, you fight bosses. That's it. That's the game. There are bosses and you get to fight them. In the game, you lead 4 young, aimless adults in their heroic quest to figure out what the heck they're doing with their lives. Fight witches, liches, snitches, that was my part added in there, bears coming out your ears, robots and trees, I won't ask, in battles that will test your mind and your cunning and probably your patience. Learn new skills to fight bosses even harder. Tweet about the bosses, flirt with the bosses, fall in love with the bosses. There's a big world out there and it's wonderful and strange and full of bosses. There's maximum bosses. Each boss has a special set of skills and strategies specifically designed to mess up your face. They'll respond to your tactics intelligently, and outsmarting them isn't going to be easy. Do your best to keep their chaos in line lest they get even stronger, and you get to customize your crew before each fight with lots of skills and gear. So, Rook, what is this game?
Okay.
Has it changed since its inception and this game description? What is it about?
Okay, so I wrote the description like 6 years ago. I still really like it. So right now, okay, so it started off basically like this. I played Craze's Wine and Roses, and I loved that game so much. I wanted to do more of it.
Oh my gosh.
I
brilliant.
love Wine and Roses.
Yeah.
For people who don't know, Wine and Roses is a little short game by Craze. It's not super. It's a couple hours, and basically what you do, you control 3 characters in an RPG turn-based battle system that has like a lot of strategy and tactics to it. And every fight is unique. Every fight you don't.
Yeah.
There's no random encounters. Every fight is basically a unique encounter with tactics and strategy, and it makes the game a little bit more puzzly. It's basically like you have to find a way to defeat the encounter, and there's a bunch of ways you could do it, but it involves kind of solving the puzzle of the encounter, and it's really, really cool. And I loved that concept, and I wanted to run with it.
I love games like that. Wine and Roses,
oh my God.
Particularly where each game feels like almost like a puzzle because there's specific just strategies that work, and you just have to try and use your brain to figure out how to overcome these obstacles.
Yeah. So the current iteration of Boss Game is a little bit. It's very much born out of the ashes of that description that you read. Right now, it's still the concept is very much the same. You fight bosses. Every fight is unique, and basically the way it works right now is every fight I've kind of tried to design as like a duel where you control 2 characters, and there's a boss on the other end, and there's a lot of back and forth like tempo and dancing. So it's an action game as opposed to a turn-based game now,
right?
Because it really came from the same thing. Like I came up with this kind of control scheme because I wanted to try and make a cool like action RPG for mobile phones, or whatever. And I came up with a control scheme that really worked, and I tuned the heck out of it basically. So you control Sophie and Anna, who are the couple main characters from the original Boss Game, and they're a pair of hunters, and they go through and they fight monsters and evil people, and there's an overarching scheme that I'm still kind of you defeat evil through the power of love and stubborn persistence, I think is the way I'm calling it. Yeah. So the concept is very much the same. You fight a bunch of unique fights. I tried to make every fight very unique feeling and very like have its own little puzzle to solve. But I've also tried to give it kind of an action feel too, so there's a bit of back and forth and good timing and stuff like that. And it's been coming together pretty well. I'm actually very happy with it so far. So
nice. And what engine are you using?
So I'm still using Unity. Yeah. So the original Boss Game was an RPG Maker, and this one I moved this one over to Unity specifically because I was designing for mobile. And I'm still going to do my best. I should be able to get it on PC no problem. and other systems I can get it out onto, I will do if I can. But
you're still yet to defeat that RPG Maker beast.
What's that?
You're still yet to defeat that RPG Maker beast.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. I will never every time I try and make a game in RPG Maker, I just end up it's at this point and I love RPG Maker because I have prototyped so many great ideas in it, but I always end up moving over to Unity or something anyway. Because it's just I've worked with Unity for 10 years now, and it's very familiar to me.
I'll come back to Boss Game, but now I'm going to hop over to Red Nova's game, which is Prayer of the Faithless, which I've actually played an early demo of and loved.
Thank you.
The world's on the verge of being consumed by the fog, an ever-growing mist that corrupts and destroys all life within it. Unable to reach the source, humanity has no way to stop the fog's growth. The destruction of the world is inevitable, and humanity is at the end of its time. Prayer of the Faithless integrates elements of classic survival horror games into its turn-based battle system. There's no readily accessible healing abilities, so your survival depends on managing a limited supply of restorative items you find or purchase. In addition, your equipped weapons and armor will drastically affect your performance by raising some stats, penalizing others, and changing your available abilities. Each ally's personality traits affect their combat prowess and abilities, and as the story goes on and the stakes are raised, these traits will develop and degrade along with the character's mental state, which I found was a really interesting feature. And you will get to truly understand how each character thinks and feels through conversations and battle performance, and see how the state of the world affects their morale and beliefs. So, tell us a bit about Prayer of the Faithless, how much of this description applies, and what would you like to tell us about how it's going?
Okay, well, this is the one I've been working on for 5 years, and this description has been rewritten about 4 times, and I'm imagining there's going to be a 5th one before this game releases. Started off, believe it or not, this is what I started back in 2009 with RPG Maker 2K3. And at the time,
wow,
it was just for a school project, and I was like, you know what?
10 years in the making.
Kind of. Remember, I did have that rage quit for 4 years, if I can math right.
Right.
But it originally started off as, if you can believe it, a lighthearted parody RPG that makes fun of certain tropes. And it was supposed to have the good guy being put in a situation where he will be interpreted as the bad guy, and things would just work out from there. But I grew up, started watching the news, became more aware of what's going on in the world, and got very depressed. And eventually, now it's become a story about how 2 people see a horrible incoming disaster that they cannot stop. But then they essentially just raise the question, well, now what? If we can't stop it, what do we do? And as the game follows 2 different campaigns, and each campaign follows one character who interprets that what we should do now in different ways. One person only cares about protecting himself and his friends, and another one cares about trying to save as many people as she can.
Cool.
And them being friends would come together and realize that throughout their journeys, they've become different people. And when the world is falling apart around them, they have to decide what's the most important thing, what they believe in, or their friends, or their friendship. Yeah. And what I really like about it is how you play the game will affect its outcome. I'm not going to talk about the specifics here, obviously.
Yeah, so it's interesting to hear that, when the pressure comes down to it, who are we? Are we monsters or saints? That's the kind of, I suppose, it's that same, it's in a lot of apocalyptic things, but I think it's expressed quite uniquely here by the 2 different parallel campaigns. And this idea came before Soul Sunder?
Yes, actually. This was the game I started in 2009.
Right.
This is, technically speaking, a sequel to Soul Sunder, but none of the original characters or setting comes into play here. But events that happen in Soul Sunder are manifesting themselves in Prayer of the Faithless.
Right.
Shoot.
Yeah. Man, I'm so excited.
I gotta say, that sounds really cool. I can definitely get the impression that we have a similar sort of taste when it comes to the things we write our games about. worst. Because a lot of that's
Yeah.
ringing very familiar to me.
As you go through the game, the feeling I wanted to convey was being weighed down by a lot of awful things that you can't change, but still having the determination to press on. And one ways I represent that is as characters kind of fall apart mentally, they have debuffs assigned to them. Debuffs that don't ever go away, which makes it a real pain to balance, but
yeah, jeez.
The idea is that, we're not strong, we're not superhuman, but we're alive. We're going to keep going.
Shoot.
Yeah, it seems that like Soul Sunder. I mean, this is kind of a joke, but you like to make punishing games. no. This game has survival mechanisms, and what can you say about implementing, say, like, well, it's not maybe traditional survival, but feels like battles that are maybe in the survival style of combat? And how did you feel to implement that into this game?
It's a really difficult balance because while there are battles that you can and likely should avoid, you still have experience and level up. So the tension that comes from deciding, should I fight this person, is the same tension that I felt personally when I was playing through the original Resident Evil. Was, should I expend this ammunition to put down the guys in this hallway, or should I just leave?
Yeah.
And that kind of on-your-feet decision-making, where enemies are approaching you, and you're just like, wait, is it worth it to take these guys out? That's what I wanted to convey here. Because again, this is a world of hopelessness, so it's to defeat everything in your path is not what I'm trying to go for. So you need to be smart, fight only who you have to, and the tension of, am I strong enough by the time you get to the end of the level, I think works. It's real enough to give you a sense of fear.
Shoot.
Yeah, because fighting is not always the option. Like it's choosing whether to fight or flee would be one of the decisions, right? You're like, you make a judgment and you're like, should I fight here or should I just run? And that may be like parallels with the apocalyptic setting where you're like, sometimes I need to fight this and sometimes I just need to accept it and run away.
Well, that was the big thing in, like, I remember like old versions of D&D or something, right? Where the biggest thing was like, your goal is to get to the end. Your goal is not to defeat everything. It's just to survive till the end of it. Like, and a lot of games, I think the problem with a lot of games is that they do so much to make fighting fun, like the most interesting part of the game. And if you kind of have to just, if you properly like entice people, be like, like fighting isn't necessarily the most fun part of the game because surviving to the end, or like you have to find a good way to do that. That's cool. Permanent debuffs is a really cool idea. I kind of like that.
Right. I suppose this connects with boss game and that you want both death to feel like it's earned or that it fits with the story. There's that particular roguelike maxim, death is fun. Yeah. It seems like you want to make each battle unique and interesting. So, Rook, what strategies do you use to make each battle unique and make death feel earned? And I'll ask Reed after that, Nova after that if he wants to make way in.
Yeah, so with boss game, basically, I mean, this is the kind of thing that I really like. Like, designing bosses is an absolute riot. because I basically started realizing, like, the more and more what I wanted to do is I would design bosses that mostly the trick with a boss, for example, is that very much in most games, like, the boss is the end of a chapter of some kind, right? Like it's the end of a level or a series of levels. In a lot of games, what that boss kind of does is it kind of accumulates what you've learned through playing through the level. So an RPG, like take a Mario boss. A Mario boss like usually involves a lot of jumping or like platforming challenges or whatever. Because or a boss that requires you to use an item or a skill you just got. And if your game is all bosses, you have to do that build up during the boss fight. So basically, I have a lot of these bosses have a lot of the mechanics kind of build on each other as the most exciting part of the boss is the end. But the boss starts off like very intense and cool. You start to learn like, oh, this is what the boss does. Like this is, they shoot some projectiles and they do like an attack combo. Okay, cool. Once you like die to those a couple times and you figure out what they do, you're like, all right, cool. I'm getting kind of comfortable with this. and then you get to the next kind of phase, and the boss starts doing that, but steps things up a little bit, or throws some wrenches in the mix. So I do a lot of that, and the other thing I do is I've tried to make each boss kind of break the rules a little bit. So you have your first couple bosses kind of teach you, like, okay, some bosses will do like a 3-hit combo on you or whatever. Like they'll run up to you and slash at you 3 times, and you have to block 3 times. Okay, and then like, oh, there'll be a couple bosses that'll like shoot fireballs at you, and this is what that looks like. Okay, cool. And then you kind of have the general feel for like what fighting a boss will feel like. And then as you go like 4 or 5 fights later, you'll start to do bosses that do the same thing but start to break the rules. So I have, like a boss that will feint, for example, which is like fake an attack at you, or like telegraph attacks at you in a ways that are predictable but cheat a little bit, or like or trick you a little bit, basically. And I do this in such a way that like I've done my best to make it feel either funny or not super unfair the first time. But basically, the further you get along, the more you have to kind of build on what you've learned already, basically.
Right.
And each boss will do something like some bosses might remove some abilities you have, or change size halfway through. You like things like that kind of so keep surprising people, basically.
It's quite common in puzzle games to like build rules on top of each other. So the idea that you are, or in games in general, you are adding a new layer of complexity with each boss per se is, something that's quite interesting. And it feels similar to, it'll look great on your resume where you had several levels that were just adding new elements each time. With like cutscenes in between. Yeah,
I focused a lot on the idea of like the pacing curve, where like you start off a boss fight and you feel pretty comfortable, and then by the end of the boss fight you've reached like that kind of higher pace of like, oh, things are really, really intense, and I just beat this boss by the skin of my teeth, sort of thing. And then the next boss, is a little harder than the first one. It's the start of the next boss is a little harder than the start of the boss previously, but then it gets a little higher every time. It gets a little trickier every time, and then by the end of the game, hopefully, you're doing wacky things and getting away with it because you know what you're doing now.
Yeah. All right. So we're just going to maybe rush through some questions now in our following segment, because we haven't got. I don't want to keep you for too long, but firstly, I'm just going to ask really quickly. What are your future plans for these 2 games? Just release dates for demos or full versions. Where can we play it? Where can we follow you? Just maybe in a couple, sentences or something.
Sure. I've released enough demos for Prayer of the Faithless that keep changing over time, so that the next one I'm going to release is going to be right before the official game releases. So I'm going to say like a week or a month before the official game, the full game is out, because I don't want to keep sending messages to players that, hey, this is actually not part of the game, because I had to take it out or something.
Sure.
And we can just follow that on your rpgmaker.net page for Prayer of the Faithless, right?
You can do that. You can follow my Twitter. I make a lot of micro updates there as well, if I have the time between awful jokes.
And Nova's Twitter is, I'm just going to get it real quick.
Well, I am here, so I can say it.
Yeah, you can say it. You can say it.
It is Vermilion Nova.
Yeah. Vermilion Nova.
Yes.
And what about you, Rook?
So my plan for the game right now is to... I have a plan for a small prologue where basically it'll just be a free prologue, which will probably be like 2 or 3 bosses that you can play and download for free. The game is designed for mobile, so Android and iOS. I know right now I'm planning on just pushing... Well, no, for the prologue, I'll definitely push both an iOS and an Android release. And I want to do that sometime in the next couple months. And then my goal for the release date of the game is hopefully... or I'm gonna say spring 2020. So sometime in the first quarter of 2020.
These hopeful release date predictions.
Yeah, so I'm not. So realistically, I'm aiming for very early 2020, but I'm being polite with myself and let's say in 2020. And it'll be a game you can download for Android and iOS. If you would like to listen to me ramble about game design and my own video games and also other video games, and also just retweet a lot of fan art I like or art I like, I'm on Twitter at It's Me Agent V. And I tweet pretty much about video games.
Nice.
And I tweet a lot of art and food I cook sometimes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, we're just going to breeze through this segment. It's called Iron Man Asks Questions we probably don't know the answers to, but we'll try.
Ooh.
Kep asks, what is the first thing you consider when coming up with a protagonist for your game?
That would be why. Why should somebody play at this person? What separates this protagonist from a bunch of other protagonists? What do they go through? How do they change? How are they at the start? How are they at the end? What happens to send them on that way? For Soul Sunder, the game that one of the first game I completed on my own, it was a game about overcoming loss and survivor's guilt. And I was like, well, there are multiple ways you can do that. Do you just want to move on with your life? Or do you want to just kind of stay back in the past and accept what you've done? And then spend your time making reparations. No bad ending, but I couldn't decide which one I should go with, so I just decided, why not both? And so that's one thing I do when I come up with protagonists, the different ways they can overcome their problems.
Yeah, so I think when I come up with protagonists, it's pretty similar. Like I usually have usually by then I've come up with a mechanic for the game, and sometimes I sort of have like a theme or something I want to kind of focus on or talk about. For example, with Resume, Resume was a game I made when I was mad I couldn't find any jobs and people didn't want to pay me. So that game has a silent protagonist, but the main character of the game is very much the boss that you're talking to, and it was me taking out my frustrations on poor bosses that I had spoken to. So I think a protagonist is usually like a protagonist will start off with an idea of like a way to experience growth and talk about something I'm interested in talking about, like whether it's Mirror Boy was about like the danger of really, really burdensome family expectations.
Yeah.
And so Mirror Boy was very much about this character who was like trying to escape from under that. Boss games protagonists are essentially faced with the problems of a dangerous world, and they have two different philosophies on how they might go about fixing that. And a lot of the game is them kind of coming to terms with like, hey, what can we do? Or what's the best approach for this? Or how do we approach even addressing like an overbearing problem?
Marin asks, hobbies outside of game making?
Yeah, my hobby is, I used to do it a lot before I got an injury, but I loved hiking and backpacking. I used to do that all the time, and that's another part of my hobby. I incorporate that into my games a lot, as best as I can.
I noticed that. Oh, wow.
That's cool, yeah.
Soul Sunder had campsites where you could just chill out around a fire and talk with people.
Yeah.
I do a lot of stuff. I like running. What am I doing right now? I've been picking up the guitar again, which has been nice. I played guitar since I was a kid, so it's always just a good, like, it's nice to have a hobby that is away from the computer, basically. Yeah. And I draw too, so yeah.
Oh, nice. Kailela asks, favorite animal and favorite pet animal?
Oh, shoot.
Wow, okay, that one came out of nowhere.
Shoot, no, that's fair.
Yeah, totally fine.
The real questions of game design.
Yeah, no kidding.
So my favorite animal is I really like crows. I think crows are super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think they're like
nice.
They're like weird and they have all this like sort of spooky and intense imagery around them, but they're also like just cool birds that are also really, really smart. Like there's tons of these YouTube videos of like crows solving really complex puzzles to get food.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think I've seen those. Oh, it is insane.
They're great.
They're terrifying is what they are. They are super smart.
Nice.
Way smarter than we gave them credit for.
Oh yeah, they pick locks with things, and they like learn how to use levers and cranks. Like,
stop! I want to sleep tonight.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And as far as a pet, I love dogs. Like I like cats fine, but I love dogs.
Yeah.
A get like a corgi or a pug or something. I don't know.
Right.
So I grew up with cats and dogs, so I can't really decide between them. But
yeah, of course.
My favorite animal in general would probably it's not anything specific, but something that can fly. I don't have a specific bird in mind, but
a cat or a dog, flying cat.
Yeah, there we go.
A flying cat or a dog. There we go. That's perfect. Now I just need to go. Who do I have to pay to genetically engineer those?
Yeah. My favorite animal is a cat, and my favorite pet animal is a cat.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I think we'll end there.
Cool.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
You are both some of my favorite developers in the scene, and I'm sure people will be extremely grateful to hear from you. Yeah, that's the end of our podcast. Thank you for listening, and yeah, thank you for joining us, Red Nova and Rook.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Oh boy!
All right. It's great talking to you.
Bye, everybody. See you later.
Uh-huh. Bye.